Hello and welcome to the 16th video that I'll be posting in my Unity platformer tutorial series. And in today's video, we will be starting to create our UI. And our UI will usually show or tell the player about the health and how much items that they have collected. And in today's video, we will only be discussing about the cherry or the amount of items the player collected, and I'll be adding about the health system once we've programmed or created our enemies. So right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start creating the UI or canvas. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to the hierarchy, right click, go to the UI section and go to the canvas. Click it and it's gonna directly spawn a huge canvas. And if you want to see how huge it is, just double click on the canvas. And this is what our player will see when playing the game. Or this is basically the whole screen. And the game, this is our game here, will adjust to the canvas. This is the positioning of the canvas, and it's pretty hard to see things here, but then just trust me that this is your screen size, and if you put a text here, then when we click play, the text will spawn right over here. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna directly go to our canvas and then create another UI, and we're gonna create some text. Okay, and there is actually a few main difference between TextMeshPro and text. So as you can see, there's text and TextMeshPro. So TextMeshPro is actually a type of text that's more advanced than text, and it's just less pixelated, and text is more pixelated. So I usually like to use TextMeshPro because it's much more complete when it comes to the font size, color, gradient, and many more. And there's more options to do with TextMeshPro than normal text. And then it's gonna ask us to import the text, and we're just gonna click import the text. It's gonna load. Okay, so when it's successfully imported, you're gonna get a text here, and we're gonna move the text by going to our W key, and moving is essentially the same with our normal changing position text. And then I'm gonna name this text by clicking on our text here. Let's just rename this to cherry title. Okay, and then I want to change the type or the text here to cherries. So let's just change our new text to cherries. Cherries. And then like this. And then we go to our color here. Let's just change the color to something like black. And then make this bold. Then when we click play, we're gonna see cherries in the top of our screen here. It doesn't do much yet and doesn't do anything yet, but then it is there. And then we can scale this up with our scale tool. Gonna move it right here. Click on play once more. And that's a reasonable size. Okay. And then we're gonna add one more, and we're just gonna duplicate this. And we're gonna move our duplicated file next to it, and then we're just gonna spawn this cherry to be 0, and I want this to be just a number. Okay, so we're just gonna use this to be a number, and I'm gonna name this count cherries, and the main purpose is to show out the number of cherries that the player have picked. For the meantime, this is good enough. Yeah, it's good enough. Okay. And then once we've got our number, we can go to our script, go to the script folder, open player control script, and we can program the count cherries to follow our cherry num. As you can see, cherry num is containing the amount of cherries that the player has collected, and we can actually use our cherry num to change the value of our count cherry. And what we're gonna do first is, you can see we are only using 3 systems, using system collections, using system collection dot generate, and using Unity engine. And we're gonna be adding 2 more, and that is really self-explanatory. We're gonna start by using Unity engine dot UI, since we are actually dealing with UI elements. So we need to tell Unity that we're actually dealing with UI elements. And we are also using TM-Pro. If you don't know what is TM-Pro, TM-Pro is basically TextMeshPro, and we have to use TM-Pro here because we've exported a new assets or preset by Unity, and it's called TextMeshPro. And if we did not use TextMeshPro and use text only, we don't need to actually import text or type in using text. We don't actually need to do that, because Unity Engine.ui already involves text, but not TextMeshPro. TextMeshPro is another branch, and it's really used for text. But I'm just gonna teach you right now that when you use TextMeshPro, you need to type in using TM-Pro on top, so that it initializes or knows that you are using a new asset, and that is TextMeshPro. And then we're gonna make a new variable so that we can control our TextMeshPro. And the way we can type it is, we're gonna type public TextMeshPro, and it's gonna ask for TextMeshPro or TextMeshPro UGUI. And we're going to use TextMeshPro UGUI because that's how we know, or we want to assign text. And this TextMeshPro is not for text. The TextMeshPro is essentially used for meshes in 3D world space. Meanwhile, the TextMeshPro UGUI is used when working with canvas elements. And in this case, we are going to use TextMeshPro UGUI because we want to edit our text in our canvas. And we're gonna name this TextMeshPro UGUI Cherry Text so that we can assign it. And then if we go back to our Unity program here and go to our player, it's gonna ask us for a TextMeshPro, and we're gonna drag in our count cherries because we want to edit that. Okay, and then we can just simply type in, when we go to collision here, cherry num plus 1 here, we can type in a code for our TextMeshPro, and that is gonna be cherry text. Wait, no, cherry num plus 1. We want to make sure that cherry num plus 1. Then we go cherry text, and then we're talking about cherry text here, and cherry text is count cherries, and then we want to change the text version. So cherry text dot text equals to what we want to change, and we want to take in our cherry num value, because our cherry num will be storing how many cherries that the player have collected. And then we're gonna type in cherry num and always end with a semicolon. However, it's gonna show us a red line, and it's gonna say cannot implicitly convert type into string. Well, actually you can. You can just type in at the end to string and with a bracket so that it knows that we're calling a method. And you might be wondering, why don't we just use all our ints to string? Well, that's a good question, but the main problem with this is that if you're trying to add our numbers, and just say cherry num, let's just say a string value of, let's just say string value 1 equals to 20, and then string value 2 is 40. Okay, and then this is not a real line of code, but I'm just gonna type it in so that you guys can see. And then when you type in value 1 plus value 2, it's gonna say 20 plus 40, 2040. It doesn't actually add, but then if we use int here, the computer directly knows that it is actually a number. And when we add 20 plus 40, it'll get 60. That is why string and int don't work well with each other. But then when we want to make sure that we want to type into the text, we can't let the computer know that it's still an int because it will not place in numbers. So we have to convert it to string when we are typing in text. Okay, and now when we click play, we actually have our cherry text updating. As you can see, now it's 3. Let me add more, I guess. Oh. For the meantime, that's good enough, right? And then we're gonna review our code, and we're gonna add more UI, probably as the series continues, because we're gonna have to create enemies in the next video, and yeah. And in every platformer game, we're gonna have health system so that the player knows how many health or how many life points does the player still have before dying. Okay, and let's just go to the top again and let's review all our code. So what we did change is our Unity engine.ui here, and Unity engine.ui must be written when you are typing in UI or editing UI or editing anything in UI. And TMPro here is used for our TextMeshPro. If you're using text, you don't need to type in TextMeshPro, but I would like to use TextMeshPro more than text because TextMeshPro is much more complete, and all of the features in TextMeshPro is much more complete than text, and that's why I recommend using TextMeshPro more than text. And then below here we have our public TextMeshPro GUI, and this is for this code right here is used to tell the computer which TextMeshPro are we talking or which TextMeshPro we want to assign for. Then in the bottom we go to, we did not change anything here. We go to our onTriggerEnter method and we added our cherryText.text equal to cherrynum to string. And the way this works is cherryText is something that we assigned, and we assign in our player that it's our count cherries. So our count cherries will change. So our count cherries dot text. So the count cherries text will change to our cherrynum, which is an int value, which is a number. Then we place into string, which allows the computer to write it in a text, in text form. Okay, and that's it. That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hope you guys understand more about Unity platformer making, and I'll see you in the next video.